Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into the quiet, mossy forests of ancient Anatolia to witness a story about what happens when you give a god a bad review. Imagine the televised finale of a massive singing competition. The lights are blinding, the tension is thick enough to cut with a knife, and the celebrity judges are ready to make a career-ending decision. Now imagine that the pop star on stage, glittering in gold, has the literal power to turn the one judge who dislikes their performance into a farm animal. That's the level of petty drama we're easing into tonight. Frankly, in an age of online comment sections, if every user with a hot take had divine power, you probably wouldn't survive your first opinion on a movie trailer. The ancient world was a little more direct with its feedback. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always fun to see where everyone is listening. So feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. It creates a nice sense of a shared, quiet moment, even though we're scattered all across the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet make almost no sound on the thick carpet of moss and fallen pine needles. You find yourself in a forest in Phrygia, a kingdom in the heart of ancient Anatolia. The air is cool and thin, carrying the clean, sharp scent of pine and the deeper, richer smell of damp earth. Sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy. Above, sending down dappled, shifting columns of light that dance across the forest floor like curious spirits. It's quiet here. Not an empty, sterile quiet, but a living silence, filled with the gentle hum of unseen insects, the distant rustle of a creature in the undergrowth, and the soft sigh of the wind through the high branches. You are completely, peacefully alone. Or are you? There's a strange energy in the air, a low-level static you can feel on your skin. It's the feeling of being in a place that is older than any story you know. It's a land of ancient magic and even more ancient gods. You walk on, your path guided by nothing more than intuition, a gentle pull toward a clearing up ahead. This part of the world, Phrygia, was famous for its wild, untamed nature. It's a landscape that feels like it belongs to chaos, to the unpredictable, whims of growth and decay. The trees grow where they please, twisting into gnarled shapes. Wildflowers push up through tangled roots, their colors a vibrant, unplanned riot. This is the domain of the satyr, the nymph, the untamed spirit. Yet you can also feel the distant pressure of order. Far to the east lies the capital, Gordium, a city of walls and roads, a place famous for the intricate knot left by its ancient king, a puzzle so complex it was said that whoever could untie it would rule all of Asia. Centuries later, a young and impatient Macedonian named Alexander would arrive, and, rather than fiddling with the ropes, would simply draw his sword and slice it in half. A very Apollo-like solution to a very Pan-like problem, imposing clean, decisive order on tangled, rustic chaos. You feel that same tension right here, in this forest. The wildness of the woods feels ancient and true, but there's a faint, almost imperceptible sense that something is trying to tame it, to organize it. The gods, much like modern corporations, were always in a state of hostile takeover, vying for influence, for worship, for control of the narrative. Historians still debate whether the legendary King Midas, with his golden touch and unfortunate ears, was based on the very real, very powerful King Mita of the Mushki, who ruled Phrygia in the 8th century BCE. It seems even back then, reality and myth were tangled together, as hard to separate as the roots of these ancient trees. As you meander, you think about the music of this place. The Phrygians were known for a particular style of music, one that was ecstatic, emotional, and wild. It was played on reed pipes and drums, and was often used in the frenzied worship of Cybele, the great mother goddess of the mountains. It was music that didn't follow rules. It followed the frantic beat of a human heart. It was the perfect soundtrack. For a place like this, you can almost hear it now, a phantom melody carried on the breeze. You pause and lean against the rough bark of a towering cedar tree, its scent thick and grounding. The quiet deepens, and that feeling of being watched returns stronger this time. It's not menacing, not yet, It's more like the feeling you get when you're the only person in a vast museum and you can feel the weight of all the history and artistry staring back at you. Here the art is the world itself, and the artists are the powerful unseen forces who consider it their personal canvas. And like any artists, they are intensely proud of their work and deeply, dangerously sensitive to criticism. A twig snaps nearby, not under your foot. Something else. You stand perfectly still, your breathing shallow. The forest seems to be holding its breath with you. The sunlight dims for a moment as a cloud passes over the sun, and the temperature seems to drop. The gentle hum of the insect ceases. The silence is now absolute, and in that silence you hear something new. It's faint, carried from a distance, but it's unmistakable. It's the sound of music, a simple, lonely melody played on a pipe, a sound that seems to rise from the earth itself. It's a sound of pure, unrefined nature, and it's getting closer. And it's getting closer. The melody weaves through the trees, a thread of sound pulling you forward. It's a strange tune, full of life, but also a deep, ancient melancholy. It's the sound of a summer afternoon turning into evening, the sound of new leaves unfurling, the sound of a lonely stream finding its way to the sea. It's not crafted for a concert hall. It feels like it has grown here, a natural feature of the landscape like the moss and the stones. You follow it, your curiosity overriding the faint whisper of caution in the back of your mind. The path you were on dissolves, and you now simply move toward the music, stepping over fallen logs and pushing aside low-hanging branches of fragrant fir. You emerge into a small, sun-drenched clearing, and there he is, the source of the music, the heart of the forest's wild energy. At first, your mind struggles to process what you're seeing. He is lounging against a sun-warmed boulder, his upper body that of a man, with broad shoulders and strong weathered arms, but from the waist down he is something else entirely. His legs are covered in thick, coarse brown fur, ending not in feet but in cloven hooves, one of which is tapping idly against the stone, keeping a silent, rustic rhythm. Two small, sharp horns curl back from his brow, nestled in a tangle of dark, unruly hair. It is Pan. He brings the instrument to his lips again, and you see it clearly now. It's a set of hollow reeds, lashed together in a row from longest to shortest. A syrinx, the panpipes. His eyes are closed, his face a mask of intense concentration and pure, unadulterated joy. He is completely lost in his own creation. Historians and classicists still debate whether the figure of the satyr, this half-man, half-goat creature, represented a genuine folk memory of a wild, pre-civilized people, or if it was purely a symbolic invention, a way for the civilized Greeks to explore their own wilder, repressed instincts. Seeing him now so utterly real and present, you feel the distinction hardly matters. He is the spirit of this place, tangible and breathing. The music he coaxes from the reeds is mesmerizing. It speaks of things you instinctively understand, but have no words for. It's the feeling of running barefoot through cool grass, the thrill of a summer thunderstorm, the deep, sleepy peace of a flock of sheep grazing on a hillside. It's a song of fertility, of life in its most raw and potent form. There's a chaotic energy to it, a feeling that this same music could lead to a joyous dance or a wild, frenzied stampede. You can feel how this raw pastoral power would eventually echo through the centuries, tamed and ritualized by the Romans in their festival of Lupercalia, where men, channeling this same wild spirit, would run through the city in a rite of purification. Here in this clearing, you are seeing the raw, unfiltered source code for that primal energy. You watch his fingers, surprisingly nimble, dance over the openings of the pipes. You recall the story of how this instrument came to be. The pipes, they say, were once a beautiful nymph named Syrinx. Pan, in his wild and lonely state, fell in love with her, but she fled from his rough, animalistic form. To escape him, she prayed to be transformed, and her wish was granted as she reached the river's edge, her body dissolving and reforming into a stand of hollow reeds. Pan, arriving moments later, found only the reeds whispering in the wind. Heartbroken, he cut them down, bound them together, and found that his breath, blown across their openings, created a mournful, beautiful melody. His instrument is his, lost love. His music is his eternal lonely song for her. It adds a layer of surprising sadness to the cheerful, mischievous figure before you. He plays a final, fluttering cascade of notes that sounds like a startled bird taking flight. And then, silence. The music stops. The clearing feels profoundly empty without it. Pan lowers the pipes from his lips, holding them gently in one hand. He lets out a long, contented sigh, the breath misting in the cool air. Then, he opens his eyes. They are not human eyes. They are ancient, intelligent, and full of a wild, knowing light, the color of amber and old gold, and they are looking directly at you. You freeze, feeling like a child caught eavesdropping. But there is no anger in his gaze, only a calm, unnerving acknowledgement. He knows you've been here all along. A slow grin spreads across his face, a grin full of mischief and boundless, unshakable confidence. He has an aura of profound ancient power, mixed with the distinct vibe of someone who would definitely not help you move apartments. He holds up his pipes, admiring them as if they were the most wondrous object in creation. He looks from the pipes to the forest around him, the kingdom where his music is the only law. You can almost see the thought forming in his mind, a thought as solid and real as the boulder he's sitting on. It's a feeling of immense, swelling pride, a conviction that is absolute and pure. This music, the feeling radiates from him. This is the truth. This is the sound of the world as it truly is. He believes with every fiber of his strange and powerful being that the song he just played is the greatest music that has ever been or ever will be. And in that moment of perfect, unassailable pride, you feel a subtle shift in the world's quiet equilibrium. The static in the air buzzes a little louder. His simple, rustic pride is a stone tossed into the great still pond of the cosmos, and the ripples have just begun to spread. He has no idea who or what is listening. But you do. Because as that perfect solitary thought of pride blossoms in Pan's mind, the very atmosphere of the clearing begins to change. The comfortable golden sunlight of the afternoon suddenly intensifies. It's no longer a gentle warmth, it's a brilliant, penetrating heat, as if the sun has decided to descend from the heavens and pay a personal visit. The dappled shadows of the leaves vanish, bleached away by a light so pure and so absolute, it seems to iron out all the forest's gentle imperfections. The air, once scented with pine and damp earth, now smells of something clean and sharp, like the air after a lightning strike, or the sterile atmosphere of a marble temple. Then he is there. He doesn't arrive. He doesn't walk or appear in a flash. He simply resolves out of the light as if he were there all along and your eyes were just too imperfect to perceive him. It is Apollo. And he is the absolute antithesis of everything you have just witnessed. Where Pan is rustic, earthy, and wild, Apollo is polished, radiant, and terrifyingly perfect. He is tall and slender, with hair the color of spun gold that falls in immaculate waves to his shoulders. His skin is flawless, his features so symmetrical that he doesn't look quite real. He has the unnerving beauty of a divine statue, a beauty that doesn't invite admiration so much as it demands silent, awe-filled submission. He is the divine equivalent of an aggressively minimalist influencer. His very presence seems to judge the chaotic clutter of the natural world around him. In his hands, he holds his instrument, the golden lyre. It is as perfect as its master. Where Pan's pipes were a handful of reeds born of heartbreak and nature, the lyre is a masterpiece of divine engineering. Its soundbox, you recall from the stories, was first formed from the polished shell of a tortoise, an object of nature hollowed out and repurposed for a higher, more orderly function. Its curved arms gleam, and the strings, once fashioned from something as mundane as sheep gut, now shimmer with a faint internal light stretched to a perfect mathematical tension. Apollo does not speak. He doesn't even seem to notice you. His gaze sweeps over the clearing, not with curiosity, but with the cool, detached air of a master architect inspecting a flawed construction. His eyes, the color of the summer sky, eventually land on Pan. Pan's confident, mischievous grin has vanished. He sits frozen on his rock, his simple pipes clutched in his hand. For the first time, you see him through Apollo's eyes, a shaggy, unkempt creature of mud and impulse, clinging to a crude toy. Then, Apollo plays. He lifts the lyre, and his fingers, long and elegant, brush across the strings. The sound that emerges is nothing like Pan's music. It does not speak of the earth. It speaks of the heavens. It is the sound of pure, unassailable order. Each note is a perfect, mathematical point in a flawless geometric progression. It is the music of crystalline structures, of planetary orbits, of philosophical truths carved in marble. Listening to it, you don't feel the urge to dance. You feel an overwhelming urge to understand the fundamental, intricate laws of the universe. It's a music so perfect it's almost painful. A beauty so absolute it feels like a judgment on everything that is messy, emotional, and human. This is the God who brought order to the world by wresting it from chaos. You think of the stories of Delphi, the sacred center of the world. It was once a dark, chthonic place, home to a monstrous serpent, Python, a child of the earth goddess Gaia. It was a place of primal fears and murky, intuitive prophecies. Apollo, the young god of light and reason, descended upon that place and slew the great serpent, claiming Delphi for himself. He bathed the darkness in his light and replaced the murky whispers with his oracle, a structured system of divine communication. Historians still debate the source of the Delphic oracle's prophecies, whether the priestess was inhaling hallucinogenic volcanic gases that seeped from a fissure in the rock, or if the visions were induced by a state of deep, self-hypnotic trance. But the purpose was clear: to take the chaotic future and impose a comprehensible order upon it. The music swelling from his lyre is the anthem of that victory. It's the sound of civilization itself, and the forest reacts. The wild tangled. Vines seem to recoil. The chaotic patterns of the leaves and branches suddenly look jarring and wrong. The very air stills, its once chaotic motes of dust seeming to hang in suspended, orderly rows. Pan stares at his own furry, goat-like legs, as if seeing them for the first time. A look of profound confusion on his face. The rustic charm of his own existence is evaporating under the sheer, oppressive perfection of Apollo's song. Apollo ends with a single resonant chord that hangs in the air like a final, irrefutable truth. It rings out, and for a moment you feel like you can see the very sound waves, perfect and concentric, expanding outward and correcting the messy vibrations of the world. The silence that follows is not the living silence Pan left behind. It is a sterile, empty silence, the silence of a vacuum. He lowers the lyre. His celestial gaze finally settles fully on Pan. There is no anger in it. There is no overt challenge. There is something far worse, a look of calm, clinical, almost gentle pity. It is the look a renowned theoretical physicist might give a child who has just proudly presented a drawing of the solar system with 6 planets. The unspoken message is deafeningly clear in the perfect quiet. That noise you were making, that was quaint. This is music. The unspoken message hangs in the sterile air, heavy and sharp as a shard of glass. That noise you were making, that was quaint. This is music. You watch Pan, and you can feel the crushing weight of that divine condescension. Every cell in his wild, untamed body seems to absorb the insult. His shoulders slump. The mischievous light in his amber eyes dims. His simple, homespun pride, so pure and joyful just moments ago, has been curdled into shame. He looks down at his reed pipes, the instrument born of love and loss, and sees only a bundle of sticks. He has been sonically, artistically, and spiritually put in his place. For a long moment he just sits there, defeated. The forest clearing, which had felt like his kingdom, now feels like it belongs to Apollo, as if the god of order has left behind a permanent lien on the property. But then something shifts. You see a flicker in his eyes, a spark of defiance, a stubborn root pushing its way through cracked stone. The shame is still there, but it is now being burned away by a rising heat. It is the anger of the overlooked, the fury of the authentic being told it is worthless. It is the raw, untamed spirit of the wild, refusing to be neatly categorized and filed away. He slowly, deliberately, gets to his hooves. His posture changes. He is no longer the humbled creature on the rock. He draws himself up to his full height, his horned head held high, his expression hardening. You are witnessing a classic textbook case of hubris. It's a concept central to the entire Greek worldview. Hubris isn't just pride. It's a dangerous, reckless, blinding arrogance. It's the state of mind where a person, mortal or minor god, looks at the established order, looks at the heavens themselves, and says, I am better. And hubris in every story is always answered by its terrible twin, nemesis, a divine and devastating retribution. You are watching Pan knowingly step onto the first half of that path. Your music is clever, Pan says, his voice raspy and low, full of the texture of bark and dry leaves. It's a shocking sound after the pure, ringing tones of Apollo. It is, full of shiny tricks and perfect angles. It is the music of a well-built cage. He takes a defiant step forward. My music is the sound of the thing that lives inside the cage. It is the sound of life itself, and it is better. Apollo's flawless face remains impassive, but you can see a flicker of something in his sky-blue eyes. It isn't anger, it's a cold, brilliant amusement. He's intrigued. Pan raises his pipes. I challenge you, a contest. Let us play, and let us see which music is truly superior, mine or yours. The words hang in the air, seeming to crystallize in the unnatural quiet. In the ancient world, a formal challenge like this wasn't just idle boasting. It was a serious, almost legal proceeding. Once a challenge was issued so publicly, refusing it would mean an immense loss of face, of time, the honor and reputation that was the currency of gods and heroes. To refuse would be to admit, however slightly, that the challenge might have merit. Pan, in his wounded pride, has played his one and only card. He has cornered the god of reason with an appeal to his ego. It's like watching an indie musician on social media call out the world's biggest pop star for being a sterile, overproduced sellout. A bold strategy, to be sure. This is the very essence of the Greek gods' drama. Historians still debate whether their intensely human-like flaws, their vanity, jealousy, and shocking pettiness, were simply narrative devices to make the stories more compelling, or if they reflected a deeper, more fatalistic belief that the universe itself was governed by fickle, often irrational forces. As you watch these two powerful beings locked in a standoff born entirely of ego, the second option feels chillingly plausible. A slow smile spreads across Apollo's perfect lips. It's not a warm or happy smile. It is the smile of a predator that has just watched its prey volunteer to step into a trap. It's the kind of smile your phone's AI assistant would have if it could, right before it permanently deletes your photo library because you used a grammatically incorrect voice command. A contest? Apollo's voice is smooth as polished marble, yet it carries an edge that could cut diamonds. You wish to formally compare your pastoral noises with the harmony of the spheres. An interesting, if foolish, proposition. He tilts his head. Very well. I accept your challenge. The moment the words are spoken, a gust of wind rushes through the clearing, as if the world itself has just exhaled. The news is now on the air, carried by the breeze, whispered from leaf to leaf, nymph to nymph. The static you felt earlier has now found its purpose. A duel has been declared. The ultimate artistic showdown. The subjective versus the objective, the heart versus the mind, chaotic nature versus civilized order. But a contest requires judgment, Apollo continues, his voice calm and steady, already taking control of the proceedings. We cannot be the arbiters of our own dispute. We will need judges to bear witness and declare a victor. He gives Pan one last lingering look of dismissive pity. Then without a sound he dissolves. The intense, perfect light fades from the clearing, and he is simply gone, as if he were never there. The normal, gentle, late afternoon sun returns, and the forest's familiar sounds slowly begin to creep back in. Pan is left standing alone in the center of the clearing, the weight of his own hubris suddenly settling on his shoulders. He has done it. He has picked a fight with the sun. He stares at the empty space where Apollo stood, a look of grim determination mixed with a dawning horror on his face. And you are left in the quiet, wondering who in the world of gods or men would be brave enough or foolish enough to agree to judge a contest like this. And you are left in the quiet, wondering who in the world of gods or men would be brave enough or foolish enough to agree to judge a contest like this. The question doesn't linger in the clearing for long. It escapes on the same breeze that carried the news of the challenge, becoming the single most pressing piece of gossip in the divine and mortal realms. You can feel it ripple through the landscape. Nymphs whisper it to each other across the babbling streams, their voices mingling with the sound of the water. Dryads murmur it from the rustling leaves of their oak trees. Travelers on the dusty roads pause their journeys to pass the rumor along. The god of the wild has challenged the god of the sun, and they need judges. The first choice is a logical one, an inevitability really. The choice is Tmolus, the ancient god of the mountain range that separates the kingdoms of Phrygia and Lydia. You shift your perspective, your consciousness drawn to the great looming mountain itself. Tmolus is not a god who walks and talks, like the Olympians. He is one of the Aurea, the primordial mountain gods born directly from Gaia, the earth at the dawn of time. He is ancient, silent, and elemental. He is the mountain, and the mountain is him. His thoughts are as slow as tectonic shifts, his memory as long as the geological ages that shaped his stony slopes. He has witnessed the birth and death of civilizations as fleeting seasons. The petty squabbles of the flashy younger gods are to him like the buzzing of short-lived insects. His agreement to judge is not spoken, it is felt. It is a deep, resonant rumble from the heart of the earth, a slow, solemn nod of a peak wreathed in cloud. He is the perfect impartial arbiter, the ultimate neutral party, but one judge is not enough. The scales of divine justice must be balanced. Apollo, in his obsession with order and protocol, would demand a second. And Pan, as the champion of the unrefined and the authentic, would want a voice from outside the divine establishment. He would want a mortal. And so the Cosmic Search Committee turns its attention to the most famous mortal in the region, the King of Phrygia himself. Your focus shifts again, drawn toward a palace that glitters under the Anatolian sun. You are near the court of King Midas. Even before you see him, you know his reputation. It's all about gold. The story everyone tells is that he was once granted a wish by a god and foolishly asked that everything he touched turn to gold, a power. That quickly became a curse. It's a cautionary tale told to children, but you sense it's also a way for people to rationalize his almost supernatural wealth. His kingdom, Phrygia, sits next to Lydia, the very place where historians believe coinage was first invented, where for the first time abstract value was stamped onto small glittering discs of metal. Midas's myth is the story of this new world, where wealth could become as tangible and as dangerous as a golden apple you can no longer eat. Historians still debate the true source of the immense wealth of the historical Phrygian kingdom, questioning whether it came from rich gold deposits in the river Pactolus, as the myths suggest, or from strategic control over ancient trade routes. Then you see the man himself. Midas is not what you expect. He is not draped head to toe in gaudy jewelry. He is a simple-looking man, with a kind, if slightly vacant, face. You get the feeling that while his palace has gold-plated everything, his secret favorite pastime is probably just sitting on a porch and watching the clouds go by. For all his legendary riches, his personal tastes are surprisingly, almost stubbornly, rustic. He prefers the simple, reedy tunes of a shepherd's pipe to the complex compositions of his own court musicians. He is a man of immense material wealth who possesses the simple artistic sensibilities of a farmer. He is, in short, the perfect judge for Pan and the worst possible judge for Apollo. The invitation arrives. It's not delivered by a mortal messenger, but by Hermes, a flash of winged sandals and a knowing smirk. He presents the divine request to Midas, who is utterly and completely flattered. To be asked by the great gods Apollo and Pan to judge their contest, he sees it as the ultimate validation of his importance. Midas, a man whose primary skill was being fabulously, almost comically rich, was now being sought for his artistic opinion. This is like asking a tech billionaire who just bought a social media company for his nuanced take on Renaissance poetry. He doesn't see the danger. He doesn't grasp that this isn't a friendly talent show. He is being asked to wade into a river of divine ego, unaware of the deadly currents that lie just beneath the surface. His acceptance is immediate, cheerful, and hopelessly naive. He promises to be a fair and impartial judge, and so the panel is set. On one side, Tmolus, an ancient elemental god, the embodiment of geological time and impartial wisdom, the tenured professor who has seen it all. On the other, King Midas, a mortal man of simple tastes and infinite wealth, the celebrity guest judge brought in for a touch of populist appeal. The venue is decided by default. The contest will be held on the slopes of Mount Tmolus, under the watchful eye of the mountain god himself. The word goes out, the stage is set, the judges are chosen. And now all that is left is for the world to make its way to the mountain. And now all that is left is for the world to make its way to the mountain. You find yourself swept up in the current of people. It starts as a trickle, a few families leaving their small farms, a merchant closing his stall early, a poet packing his scrolls. But as the small paths merge onto the main dusty road, the trickle becomes a stream, and the stream becomes a river of humanity, all flowing in one direction, toward the towering silhouette of Mount Tmolus on the horizon. The news has spread and everyone wants to be there. You are part of a great pilgrimage. The atmosphere is less like a solemn religious procession and more like the swelling crowd heading to a massive music festival. Think of it as an ancient Woodstock, but with more wool tunics, more goats, and a significantly higher chance of witnessing a participant being divinely smited. There's a palpable buzz in the air, a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Small-time entrepreneurs have already set up makeshift stalls along the roadside, selling dried figs, watered-down wine, and what looks suspiciously like official contest souvenir clay cups. Merchandising, it seems, is as eternal as the gods themselves. You fall into step with the crowd, and the physical reality of ancient travel quickly sets in. This is no leisurely stroll. The road is not paved. It's a wide, rutted track of packed earth, pulverized into a fine, choking dust by thousands of feet and the occasional cartwheel. Every step sends up a small puff of beige powder that coats your clothes, gets in your eyes, and forms a gritty film on your teeth. Travel in the ancient world was a wonderful experience if your idea of fun is getting a lungful of your neighbor's dirt and walking for 10 hours to cover the distance. You now drive in 20 minutes. Along the way, you pass small square stone pillars carved with a simple bearded face. These are harmonies, sacred to Hermes, the god of travelers. People pause to touch the stone or leave a small offering, a wildflower, a piece of bread, a quick prayer for a safe journey and protection from bandits. As you walk, you listen. The crowd is a living network of information and opinion, a sea of voices gossiping, arguing, and speculating. The main topic, of course, is the contest itself. You are witnessing the birth of fan clubs, of Team Pan versus Team Apollo. It has to be Pan, a grizzled shepherd insists to his friends, his voice full of conviction. His music has heart. It's the truth of the fields and the flocks. It's our music. A well-dressed man in a fine linen tunic scoffs nearby. Art isn't about heart, you old fool. It's about skill, about technique. It is man's duty to rise above the mud and the sheep, to pursue divine perfection. Apollo will win. It's the only logical outcome. Looking around, you see the full spectrum of society on this road, a scene reminiscent of the great Panathenaic processions in Athens, where the entire city would march to the Acropolis. Here too are farmers, soldiers, aristocrats, and priests, all mingling together. Historians still debate how much these large festive gatherings served a true religious purpose versus how much they were simply an essential social outlet, a rare chance for people from isolated villages and towns to trade goods, share news, and arrange marriages. Watching a group of young men trying to catch the eye of some giggling nymphs, you suspect the historians' debate has merit. Far ahead, you catch a glimpse of a golden gleam. It's the royal entourage. King Midas is being carried in an open air, litter made of polished cedar and inlaid with what looks like solid gold. The crowd murmurs as it passes, a wave of awe and envy. His presence lends the event a new level of celebrity glamour. He waves cheerfully, completely unaware of the artistic and theological storm he's about to step into. As the day wears on, the sun beats down, and the journey becomes a test of endurance. Your feet ache, Your throat is parched, and the endless chatter of the crowd fades into a monotonous hum. But your focus is pulled forward, to the mountain. Mount Tmolus is no longer a distant shadow. It is a giant, a colossal being of rock and earth dominating the entire landscape. Its sheer scale is humbling. The festive mood of the crowd subtly shifts as they draw nearer, the boisterous conversations quieting to more respectful murmurs. They are approaching the home of a god, the very ground they will soon stand on being the judge himself. The sun begins its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The procession finally comes to a halt at the base of the mountain. People begin to make camp. In a matter of hours, a sprawling, temporary city of tents and campfires appears on the lower slopes. The smoke from 1,000 fires drifts lazily into the twilight air, and the mountain is girdled by a sea of twinkling lights. A hush of anticipation falls over the massive encampment. The journey is over. Tomorrow, the showdown begins. You find a place to rest, the great dark mass of the mountain looming over you, and wait for the dawn. The dawn comes cool and quiet over the shoulder of the mountain. You wake not to a single alarm, but to a collective stirring, the low murmur of thousands of people waking with a shared sense of purpose. The air is crisp and clean, and the anticipation from the night before has sharpened into a keen, nervous edge. You and the rest of the vast crowd find your places on a sweeping, grassy slope that forms a perfect natural amphitheater. Below is a flat circular clearing that will serve as the stage. The world feels like a theater this morning, and everyone has a front row seat. The judges arrive. Tmolus's presence is marked by a great moss-covered outcrop of granite that looks uncannily like a massive, formidable throne. He doesn't need to arrive. He is simply more present, the focus of the mountain's ancient consciousness settling on that spot. Beside this display of elemental gravitas, King Midas's arrival is almost comical. Servants struggle to place his portable, ornate golden throne, which glitters ostentatiously in the morning sun. Midas himself settles into it, looking less like a serious arbiter and more like an excited tourist who has paid for the VIP experience. Finally, the contestants take their places. Apollo stands to one side, a vision of calm, radiant confidence. He holds his golden lyre loosely as if it weighs nothing. He looks as though he is merely waiting for a pleasant but trivial diversion to conclude. On the other side, Pan seems far more restless. He paws at the soft earth with one of his hooves, his shoulders tense. He is not a natural showman. He is a creature of secluded glens and quiet moments. But as he looks out at the crowd, his gaze hardens with a raw, defiant resolve. A brief, silent negotiation takes place between the two gods. Apollo gives a slight, magnanimous nod, graciously offering the opening slot to Pan. It is a gesture that is both polite and deeply condescending, implying that it's best to get the amateur performance out of the way first. Pan accepts with a curt nod of his own, steps into the center of the clearing and raises his syrinx to his lips. The first notes are quiet, almost hesitant. They sound like the timid melody of the first bird to sing before the dawn. A hush falls over the massive crowd, who recline on the grass sharing wineskins and morsels of bread like a vast open-air symposium. Then Pan's confidence finds him. The music swells, and you recognize the sound you heard in the forest, but now it is amplified by the setting, filled with a new power and purpose. He is playing in what the musical scholars would later call the Phrygian mode, a scale that is exotic, passionate, and deeply emotional, capable of stirring the soul to wildness and ecstasy. As he plays, an incredible thing happens. The music begins to paint pictures behind your eyes. It is a performance that bypasses the ears and speaks directly to the imagination. You see a fawn taking its first wobbly steps in a sun-dappled thicket. You feel the frantic, buzzing energy of a hive, of bees in summer. You see the silent, patient power of an ancient oak tree, its roots gripping deep into the earth. The music carries the scent of wild herbs crushed underfoot, the feeling of cool river water rushing over your hands, the sight of a hawk circling effortlessly on a thermal high above. It is a symphony of the untamed world, a story told without words. Watching the crowd being swept away by this raw narrative power, you can't help but think this is where theatre must have come from. Historians still debate the precise origins of Greek drama, but many believe it evolved from exactly this kind of rural ecstatic ritual, choral songs and dances in honor of nature gods like Pan or Dionysus, long before it was ever formalized. With masks and a permanent stage, you look around at the audience. The effect of the music is polarizing. The shepherds, the farmers, the nymphs and satyrs who have come down from the wooded hills, they are completely entranced. They are leaning forward, their faces open with emotion. Some have tears tracking through the dust on their cheeks. This is their world, their truth, given a voice. On the other hand, the more cosmopolitan attendees, the poets from the city, the architects, the stone-faced philosophers, look profoundly unimpressed. They whisper to each other behind their hands, looking bored. So repetitive, one mutters, and no discernible structure. Another, a pale man in an immaculate toga, complains loudly about the sun, wishing he had some of his expensive Egyptian sunscreen. You wonder idly if he means the high-end kind, made with rice bran, or the even more exclusive type rumored to be made with crocodile droppings. You glance at the judges. Tmolus is, as ever, unreadable. The great mountain god sits in stony silence, his face a mask of lichen and rock. A few pebbles might have shifted near his base, but it could just be the breeze. King Midas, however, is utterly spellbound. A huge, undisguised, childlike grin is plastered across his face. He is tapping his foot to the rustic rhythm, his whole body swaying. This is the greatest thing he has ever heard. Pan's music builds to a final, frenetic crescendo. It is a riot of sound, a chaotic and joyous explosion of life force that is both exhilarating and slightly terrifying. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stops. The only sound is Pan's own heavy, ragged breathing as he stands in the center of the clearing, sweat beading on his brow. He has poured every drop of his wild spirit into the performance. A beat of stunned silence hangs in the air. Then the crowd erupts, but it's a fractured, divided sound. From one side of the grassy amphitheater comes a roar of thunderous applause and jubilant cheers. From the other, only a smattering of polite, half-hearted claps. Pan looks out at his divided audience and then toward the judges' thrones, a desperate, hopeful uncertainty in his amber eyes. He has made his case. The wild heart of the world has sung its song. Now it is the sun god's turn to reply. As the last of the divided applause for Pan fades into an awkward silence, Apollo steps forward into the center of the clearing. He moves with an unhurried, liquid grace, and the very air seems to grow still and attentive around him. The rustic, earthy scent of Pan's performance is scoured away, replaced once again by that clean, sharp scent of ozone and marble. He doesn't acknowledge the crowd or his opponent. He simply lifts his lyre, his golden instrument catching the morning light and throwing it back in a dazzling, almost blinding display. He doesn't begin with a melody. He plucks a single, testing note. The sound that rings out is so impossibly pure, so perfectly pitched, that it seems to silence not just the crowd but the world itself. The buzz of insects, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, it all vanishes, subsumed by this one perfect tone. It is a sound that feels less like a note and more like a fundamental constant of the universe finally being revealed. Then, he begins to play, and what you hear is not a song, it is an audible manifestation of divine cosmic law. You are listening to the Musica Universalis, the music of the spheres. The ancient philosophers who conceived of this idea believed that the universe, in its mathematical perfection, generated its own silent music. Apollo, it seems, has decided to make that music audible. His melody is a flowing, intricate equation. The notes are points on a perfect curve. The harmonies are the sound of the golden ratio, of the precise elliptical orbits of the planets, of the unwavering laws of physics that bind the cosmos together. It is music that you understand not with your heart, but with the logical, pattern-seeking part of your brain. Your mind, which under Pan's influence had been filled with images of the chaotic, beautiful earth, is now filled with visions of a different kind. You see perfect, crystalline snowflakes forming in intricate, six-sided symmetry. You see the elegant, spiraling arms of a distant galaxy. You see pure geometric forms, cubes, spheres, dodecahedrons, turning slowly in a void, their angles and planes creating a kind of visual harmony that perfectly matches the audio. It is a profoundly, breathtakingly beautiful experience, but it is also utterly inhuman. It is the sound of a perfect divine intellect, with no room for messy emotions or mortal error. His fingers don't just play the notes, they are so precise, it's as if he is reading a celestial score, a form of complex musical notation written in the shimmering light all around him. This is the great artistic question, brought to life before you. Historians and philosophers still debate the primary function of art. Is it to reflect the messy, emotional reality of the human condition, as Pan's music did, or is it to provide an escape into a higher, more perfect world of ideal forms and divine order, as Apollo's now promises? You look to the crowd and see this debate playing out on their faces. The poet who had scoffed at Pan is now weeping openly, tears of pure intellectual ecstasy streaming down his face. This is the divine truth he has sought his entire life. The architects and philosophers are nodding in silent, profound agreement, their minds racing to comprehend the divine structures being laid bare. The pale man who was complaining about the sun is now basking in Apollo's light, which feels like a perfect, pleasant warmth without any burning heat. He looks blissful. But the other half of the crowd is utterly adrift. The shepherd who loved. Pan's song now just looks confused. He strains to find a melody to hum, a rhythm to tap his foot to, but there is none. His expression shifts from confusion to boredom, and finally to a kind of drowsy resignation. To him, this is not music. It is just a series of strange, cold, and meaningless sounds. Your gaze shifts to the judges. King Midas is in agony. The joyous, simple grin he wore for Pan is gone, replaced by a deep, furrowed frown of intense and painful concentration. He fears trying so hard to understand, to appreciate what he is being told is perfection. But he can't. He can't find the tune. He can't feel the beat. He looks deeply, profoundly uncomfortable, like a man who has been served a plate of exquisite, deconstructed culinary foam when all he wanted was a simple loaf of bread and a slice of cheese. And then you look at Tmolus. The great mountain god, for the first time, shows a definitive reaction. As Apollo plays a particularly complex and resonant chord, a single ancient fir tree on the highest, most distant peak of the mountain shivers, all its needles turning a brilliant, shimmering silver in the divine light. A low, deep, almost subaudible hum resonates from the mountain's stony core, a vibration of perfect sympathy with the music of the lyre. The mountain has heard, and the mountain approves. Apollo's performance builds not to a wild emotional frenzy, but to a crescendo of staggering mathematical complexity. It is a final, glorious chord that seems to snap the entire universe into a moment of perfect, silent, harmonious alignment. The note hangs in the air, a shimmering monument of sound, before finally gently fading into a silence more absolute and profound than any you have ever known. Apollo lowers his lyre. He is not panting or sweating like Pan. He is as serene and immaculate as when he began. He gives a small, confident nod, as if to say, QED. The case is closed. The audience sits in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the sheer, inhuman perfection of what they have just witnessed. The choice before the judges is now impossibly, painfully stark. There is no middle ground, no compromise. There is only the wild, beating heart, or the perfect divine mind. The silence stretches, taut and fragile. In this profound quiet after the storm of music, the air itself seems to be waiting. This is the culmination of the agon, the sacred contest that lies at the heart of Greek culture. The struggle is over. The arguments have been made, and now all that remains is the verdict. Every eye, mortal, nymph and satyr alike, is fixed on the two judges. You can feel the collective held breath of thousands. Historians and art critics still debate whether it is even possible to objectively judge two vastly different forms of art, or if every verdict is ultimately a reflection of the judge's own personal, subjective biases. That very question is about to be answered, with catastrophic consequences. The first judgment comes from Tmolus. He does not speak with a human voice. The great mountain god delivers his verdict in the language of the earth itself. A deep, low rumble originates from his stony core, a vibration that you feel in your bones more than you hear with your ears. The ground trembles slightly. Then, in a slow, majestic, and undeniable gesture, every tree on the sunlit slopes of the mountain bows. The ancient firs, the gnarled oaks, the slender aspens, all of them dip their highest branches in a unified silent salute toward the spot where Apollo stands. The message is as clear as it is final. The earth itself chooses order. A wave of relief and vindication washes over half the crowd. The poets, the philosophers, the adherents of Team Apollo, they erupt in triumphant, if slightly smug, cheers. "Of course," they cry, "reason prevails." It was, to them, the only possible outcome. On the other side of the slope, the shoulders of the shepherds and farmers slump in collective defeat. Pan's supporters look heartbroken. It's over. Apollo, ever serene, gives a slow, regal nod. He is not surprised. This is not a victory to be celebrated. It is simply the correct and logical acknowledgement of an obvious fact. He casts a glance at Pan, a look that radiates a calm, unpitying "I told you so." Now only a formality remains. All eyes turn to the glittering golden throne. King Midas just needs to second the motion, to nod along with the mountain and close the proceedings. But he doesn't. He's squirming. You can see the war playing out on his simple face. He saw the trees bow. He feels the crushing weight of expectation from the god of the sun, who is now staring at him with an unnerving intensity. He knows what the correct answer is. He knows what the smart answer is. But his heart, his simple, stubborn, rustic heart that loved the song of the reeds, is screaming in protest. He struggles to his feet, his jewel-encrusted robes looking flimsy and foolish in the potent silence. He looks so small, a fragile mortal caught between a mountain and a god. He clears his throat, a small, dry, nervous sound that seems impossibly loud. "The music of the great god Apollo was truly magnificent," he begins, his voice trembling slightly. "It was full of skill and geometry, a true marvel of the mind." He pauses, taking a shaky breath. Apollo gives him a look of faint, impatient encouragement. "Get on with it." "But," Midas continues, his voice suddenly finding a strange, foolish strength, "but the music of the great god Panda, it moved me. It had the honesty of the earth. It was filled with joy and with sadness. It felt real." He looks from the stunned face of Apollo to the hopeful face of Pan. "Therefore, in my judgment," he declares, his voice now ringing with a disastrous conviction, "Pan is the winner. If the silence before was profound, the silence that follows is absolute. It is a physical thing, a crushing pressure that sucks the very air from your lungs. The wind stops. The birds, which had just begun to tentatively sing again, fall silent. The triumphant cheers of Team Apollo die in their throats, their mouths left hanging open in comical disbelief. The heartbroken members of Team Pan are now staring, wide-eyed, equally stunned. You can almost hear the collective internal monologue of 10,000 beings at once. "Oh no, he did not. He just did. This is going to be very, very bad." In ancient Athens, they had a process called ostracism, where citizens could cast a vote to banish any politician they felt was too powerful or dangerous. Midas, in this moment, has cast a single personal vote of ostracism against the god of perfection himself. He has committed the ancient world's equivalent of leaving a one-star Yelp review on a restaurant owned by a famously vindictive Michelin-starred chef. You look at Apollo. His serene, confident expression flickers like a faulty projection. For a split second, you see pure, uncomprehending shock, the divine equivalent of a 404 logic not found error. That shock is instantly replaced by something else. The calm sky blue of his eyes begins to darken, swirling like a gathering thundercloud. The pleasant golden light he radiates loses its warmth, becoming a harsh, white, interrogating glare. A palpable coldness emanates from him, and the temperature on the mountainside drops by several degrees. King Midas stands there, a small, proud, foolish smile on his face. He has given his honest opinion. He has judged from the heart. He is about to learn in the most personal and humiliating way possible, exactly what the god of light and reason thinks of his opinion. King Midas stands there, a small, proud, foolish smile on his face. He is about to learn in the most personal and humiliating way possible exactly what the god of light and reason thinks of his opinion. The coldness emanating from Apollo intensifies. The very air around him seems to crackle with silent, invisible energy. Above the mountain, the clear blue sky begins to darken, a single, ominous thundercloud gathering directly overhead, even as Apollo himself glows with a brighter, more terrible light. The beautiful, serene god is gone. In his place is an avatar of pure, righteous, and terrifyingly cold fury. Apollo takes a slow step toward Midas. When he speaks, his voice has lost all its musicality. It is the sound of ice cracking, of stone grinding against stone. He does not shout. Shouting is an emotional, messy act. His fury is a precise surgical instrument. "You have judged my music with faulty instruments," the god says, his voice low and deadly. "Your ears are diseased. They are clogged with ignorance and lined with foolishness. They are incapable of discerning divine beauty from the brutish noise of the wild." He raises a single elegant finger, pointing it not at Midas's heart or head, but directly at his right ear. "The punishment then must fit the crime. If you possess the ears of a fool, you shall wear them for all to see." This is a classic, terrifying tradition. The gods of this world often punish hubris not with a quick, clean death, but with a transformation, a permanent, living monument to a mortal's transgression. You think of the weaver Arachne, whose pride in her skill led to her being turned into a spider, forced to spin for eternity. This is that kind of justice, poetic, cruel, and inescapable. Historians and theologians still debate whether the often cruel and disproportionate punishments of the Greek gods were meant as literal warnings or as metaphorical allegories about the chaotic and often unfair nature of fate itself. Looking at Midas, who is trembling under Apollo's gaze, you feel it could easily be both. Apollo's fingertip glows. The harsh, white light he radiates narrows into two focused beams, lancing across the space and striking Midas on both sides of his head. The king cries out, stumbling back. He clutches his head, a look of confusion and pain on his face. What are you doing?" he stammers. Then you see it happen. It begins subtly, a strange, stretching motion. Midas is perfectly normal. Human ears begin to elongate, pulling upward. The skin seems to thin and warp. Then a fine, downy, grayish-brown fur begins to sprout from the pink flesh, covering the entire surface in seconds. The shape continues to change, the tops becoming rounded and wide, the whole structure swiveling and twitching with an unnatural, independent life. Within moments, the transformation is complete. Midas's human ears are gone. In their place are the long, hairy, unmistakable ears of a donkey. The symbolism is as brutal as it is specific. A donkey in the ancient world was the embodiment of stubbornness, base instincts, and profound foolishness. To give the king these ears was not just to call him a man of bad taste, it was to brand him on a fundamental level as an idiot. For a moment, Midas just stands there, panting, his eyes wide with terror. He doesn't understand. Then, slowly, shakily, he raises his hands to the sides of his head. His fingers, which have known only the smooth, cold touch of gold, now encounter something else entirely. They touch coarse, unfamiliar fur. They trace the long, alien shape. His face, which had been frozen in fear, now collapses into a mask of pure, soul-shattering horror. He lets out a choked, guttural cry that sounds horribly, humiliatingly like a bray. The crowd lets out a collective gasp. The contest is forgotten. This has escalated from a musical debate into a horrifying display of divine power. People begin to scramble backward, away from the king, away from the terrifying god. Pan, who had been watching with a growing sense of dread, looks absolutely aghast. He had wanted validation, not the mutilation of his only supporter. The victory, which Midas had handed him, now feels like a toxic poison. He shrinks back into the shadows of the trees, wanting only to disappear. Tmolus, the mountain, remains silent. This is a squabble between a petulant Olympian and a foolish mortal. It is beneath his notice. Apollo gazes upon his handiwork, his expression now one of grim, righteous satisfaction. He has corrected a flaw in the universe. He has made his point about the importance of good taste. He gives the trembling, whimpering king one last look of infinite contempt. Then, with a final blinding flash of white light, he is gone. The unnatural cloud overhead dissolves, and the normal, cheerful sun returns, its light now seeming to mock the scene below. Midas is left alone in the center of the clearing, the focus of thousands of pairs of eyes. The silence is broken by a few horrified whispers, a nervous titter from the back of the crowd. He is no longer King Midas, the famously wealthy monarch. He is a spectacle, a joke. He frantically, desperately tries to cover his monstrous new ears with his hands, to hide his shame from the world. But it's too late. His reign as a respected king is over. His new life, as the man with a terrible, humiliating secret, has just begun. The journey back from the mountain is a silent, miserable affair. There is no festive chatter, no singing. The great crowd, having witnessed the terrifying reality of divine justice, melts away, eager to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the locus of a god's displeasure. You follow the royal entourage. King Midas does not wave to anyone now. He is huddled deep inside his golden litter, the silken curtains drawn tight, even under the suffocating heat of the midday sun. The slow, trudging pace of his servants feels less like a procession and more like a funeral march, carrying the coffin of his reputation back home. He arrives at his glittering palace, but the familiar sight brings him no comfort. The home that was once his pride and joy, a testament to his incredible wealth, now feels like a prison. Every polished golden surface, every gleaming floor and gilded wall is a potential mirror, threatening to flash him a glimpse of his own monstrous deformity. You drift behind him as he walks the silent, opulent halls, his footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. He is a ghost in his own life, haunted by the memory of a simple shepherd's song and the cold, unforgiving light of a god. His new life is governed by a single, all-consuming purpose: secrecy. His first royal decree upon his return is to his weavers and tailors. He demands a new kind of headwear. It must be large, intricate, and wrapped completely around his head. What they create is a magnificent, oversized Phrygian cap, a deep, soft turban with multiple folds of the finest crimson cloth. Such headdresses were already a symbol of status for monarchs in this part of the world, but Midas's is an extreme, almost desperate version. From that day on, he is never seen without, be it not for a moment, day or night. His jeweled crown now sits perched awkwardly on top of the massive turban, making him look less like a king and more like a man who had a terrible, ongoing accident at a fabric store. The turban hides the physical deformity, but it cannot hide the wound to his soul. A profound and corrosive paranoia begins to eat away at him. Historians still debate how much the absolute power of ancient monarchs isolated them, creating a world of profound loneliness, where every courtier could be a potential rival and every whisper a potential plot. For Midas, this abstract political paranoia has become a sharp, personal reality. Did that guard glance at his turban for a second too long? Were those serving girls laughing at him as he passed? He begins to hear the word ears in every conversation, even when it is not spoken. He also feels a deep spiritual stain upon himself, a concept the Greeks called miasma. It is the feeling of being divinely polluted, cursed. He, the king, is now a source of potential contamination to his own kingdom. He avoids the temples, unable to face the statues of the very gods who now mock his existence. He worries that his curse will seep into the soil, sour the harvest, and bring famine upon his people. He had once turned all he touched to gold. Now he feels as if his very presence could turn all he loves to dust. His days fall into a miserable, repetitive pattern. He wakes in the pre-dawn darkness and his hands fly immediately to his head, ensuring the turban is still secure. He conducts the business of state from behind a heavy screen, his voice muffled and distant. He eats his meals alone. He becomes obsessed with controlling the few aspects of his appearance he still can, demanding his servants bring him all manner of strange and expensive ointments and powders, hoping to stave off any other signs of decay or imperfection. The silence of his golden cage becomes his greatest tormentor. In the dead of night, when the palace is still, his new ears seem to twitch and move of their own accord, attuned to sounds no human was meant to hear: the scuttling of a mouse 100 yards away, the whisper of the wind through a keyhole, the faint phantom melodies that haunt his waking nightmares. Sometimes it is the simple, joyous tune of Pan's pipes, the song he sacrificed his dignity for, and a wave of bitter regret washes over him. At other times he hears the cold, perfect mathematical music of Apollo's lyre, and he trembles in his bed, clutching the turban around his head as if to ward off a fresh assault. The pressure of the secret is a physical weight, a constant, crushing burden. He has no one to talk to, no one to confide in. The knowledge is trapped inside him, festering, and as the weeks turn into months, one simple, mundane, and utterly unavoidable problem begins to loom larger and larger in his paranoid mind. His hair stubbornly, heedlessly continues to grow beneath the turban. Sooner or later it will need to be cut. He can't live in seclusion forever. He is a king. He must maintain some semblance of normalcy, and to do that, he will have to allow one other person, just one, to remove the turban. One other mortal. We'll have to see his shame. One other person will have to be entrusted with the most dangerous secret in the entire kingdom. One other person will have to be entrusted with the most dangerous secret in the entire kingdom. The day finally arrives, a day Midas has been dreading for months. With a heavy heart and a deep sense of foreboding, he summons his royal barber. The man who enters the king's private chambers is not a high-ranking courtier or a confident artist. He is a humble, aging servant, a man whose family has likely served Midas's family for generations. In this world he is a man of low status, perhaps even a slave, whose life and well-being are entirely dependent on the king's goodwill. This vulnerability is precisely why Midas has chosen him. A powerful man has rivals. A powerless man has only fear to keep him loyal. The barber enters expecting a routine trim. He finds the king alone in a small windowless room deep in the heart of the palace. The heavy cedar doors are barred. There are no guards. The only light comes from a single flickering oil lamp that casts long dancing shadows on the golden walls. The barber's heart begins to pound with a nameless dread. This is not normal. "Come closer," Midas says, his voice a low, strained whisper. The barber obeys, his sandals making soft, shuffling sounds on the stone floor. "Before I allow you to perform your duties," the king continues, his eyes wild with paranoia, "you must swear an oath." He makes the barber place his hand on a sacred royal artifact and swear. He makes him swear upon the names of all the gods, the mighty Olympians and the older, darker chthonic deities. He makes him swear by the unyielding, unbreakable power of the river Styx, an oath that no god or mortal can break without inviting eternal damnation. He swears that he will never speak of, write about, or communicate in any way what he is about to witness in this room. The barber, trembling from head to toe, his mind racing with terrifying possibilities, stammers out the oath. His words seal his fate. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, Midas begins to unwrap his turban. The barber watches, frozen in place, his fear momentarily replaced by a profound curiosity. Layer after layer of the fine crimson cloth is unwound and pools on the floor. What bizarre deformity is the king hiding? A battle scar, a birthmark. The final layer of cloth falls away. The barber does not scream. He does not gasp. All the air is driven from his lungs in a silent rush. His blood turns to ice water in his veins. He stares, his eyes locked on the two long, grey-furred, unmistakable donkey's ears perched absurdly on the sides of the king's head. They twitch slightly in the lamplight. It is so grotesque, so profoundly wrong, that his mind simply refuses to process it for a second. He understands instantly that this is not a trick, not a jest, but a mark of divine wrath. He has just laid eyes upon a god's curse, and he knows with a certainty that chills him to the marrow that this knowledge will be the death of him. "You will cut my hair," Midas says, his voice flat and cold, "and you will be silent." What follows is the most tense and terrifying haircut in the history of the world. The barber's hands shake so violently he can barely hold the sharp bronze razor and shears. Midas sits perfectly still, his eyes locked on the barber's reflection in a polished gold plate held by a stand. He watches every movement, every flicker of the barber's eyes. The only sounds in the room are the soft, whispery snip-snip of the shears, a sound that is deafening in the suffocating silence, and the frantic, rabbit-like beating of the barber's own heart. He carefully, painstakingly trims the hair around the base of the monstrous ears, his razor coming within a hair's breadth of the cursed flesh, terrified that one wrong move, one slight nick, will be interpreted as an act of insolence. Historians still debate the true nature of the relationships between masters and their personal slaves in the ancient world, whether it was always one of brutal subjugation, or if, in rare cases, bonds of genuine, albeit unequal, loyalty and affection could form. Looking at the scene in this room, a king drowning in paranoia and the servant who is a prisoner of his secret, you see that any affection is meaningless in the face of absolute power and absolute fear. Finally, after an eternity, it is done. The barber steps back, his forehead beaded with sweat. Midas, without a word, inspects his work in the golden mirror, then swiftly rewraps his head in the voluminous turban, restoring his facade of normalcy. He turns to the barber. "Remember your oath," he says, his voice a deadly hiss. "One word, and your life is forfeit. Now go." The barber bows deeply, stumbles backward out of the room and flees down the silent corridors. The heavy door booms shut behind him. He is free from the king's presence, but he is more of a prisoner than ever before. The secret is no longer just Midas's burden. It has been passed on like a contagious disease. The barber returns to his own humble quarters at the edge of the palace grounds, his body shaking uncontrollably. He is bound by a sacred, eternal oath and a very real, mortal threat. But the secret he now carries is so bizarre, so potent, it feels like a living thing, squirming in his gut, clawing at his throat, desperate to be spoken. He presses his lips together, tasting the salt of his own terrified tears, and wonders how long he can possibly hold it in. The barber returns to his own humble quarters, but sleep does not come. Not that night, nor the night after. The secret is not a quiet, sleeping thing. It is a hyperactive prisoner, rattling the bars of his ribs, screaming to be let out. The words King Midas has donkey's ears play on a constant, maddening loop in his mind. He sees the grotesque, twitching ears when he closes his eyes. He begins to lose weight. His hands, once steady enough for the most delicate work with a razor, now tremble constantly. He jumps at shadows, flinches at every unexpected sound. The secret is a poison, and he can feel it doing its slow, meticulous work. He feels he is approaching a breaking point. The pressure in his skull is so intense that he fears he will either go insane and start screaming the words in the middle of the palace courtyard, or that the secret will simply burst from him of its own accord. His oath, sworn on the gods and the river Styx, holds him in a cage of terror. He cannot tell a soul, a human, a nymph, not even a passing animal, for fear of divine retribution. But the need to speak, to purge the toxic knowledge, becomes more powerful than his fear of death. It is in this state of feverish desperation that a strange, brilliant idea takes root in his mind. He cannot tell anyone. The oath was specific. But the earth is not a person. The ground has no ears to hear, no mouth to gossip. Perhaps he could tell the earth. Perhaps he could find a loophole in his sacred pact with the gods. What he is seeking is a release the ancient Greeks would have understood perfectly: catharsis. It is the deep human need to purge a painful, overwhelming emotion, in his case the terror and isolation caused by the secret, to find relief and purification. He decides to perform a desperate one-man play, with the earth as his only audience. He waits for the deepest point of the night, when the moon is hidden by clouds and the palace is shrouded in a profound slumber. He slips out of his small room, a furtive shadow in the darkness. He doesn't go toward the city. He moves away from all human habitation, drawn by the faint, silvery sound of the river Pactolus. Riverbanks, in the ancient mind, were sacred, liminal spaces, a threshold between the solid, stable world of the land and the flowing, ever-changing world of the water. It is a place where boundaries are thin, the perfect spot for a strange and sacred confession. He finds a secluded bend in the river, hidden from the path by a thick, high stand of reeds that rustle softly in the night breeze. He is completely alone. He falls to his knees in the soft, damp mud. The cool earth feels good against his feverish skin. With his bare hands he begins to dig. He claws at the soil, his movements frantic and desperate, his ragged breathing the only sound besides the gentle lapping of the river. He digs and digs, dirt packing under his fingernails, until he has created a small, dark, earthy mouth in the ground. He kneels before the hole, his heart hammering. This is the moment. Historians and linguists still debate the ancient belief in the physical power of the spoken word, whether they saw a secret merely as information or as a tangible, magical force that once uttered had a real and active presence in the world. For the barber, huddled here in the dark, the secret is most definitely a tangible thing, a lump of poison he is about to physically expel. He puts his lips close to the cool, damp opening. He glances around one last time, his eyes scanning the darkness, listening for any sound of approach. There is nothing, only the reeds whispering amongst themselves. He leans in, takes a deep, shuddering breath, and whispers into the void. King Midas has donkey's ears. The words spoken aloud for the first time are a profound relief. He says them again, a little louder this time, the whisper more confident. King Midas has donkey's ears. He repeats the phrase over and over, emptying his mind, pouring the toxic secret from his soul into the receptive, silent earth. He is performing a kind of talking cure therapy, thousands of years before the concept would have a name, with a hole in the dirt as his therapist. When he is done, he sags to the ground, panting. An immense, glorious wave of relief washes over him, so powerful it almost makes him weep. The crushing weight on his chest is gone. The screaming in his mind is silent. He can breathe again. He feels light, clean, and blessedly empty. He has found his catharsis. Carefully, reverently, he pushes the excavated earth back into the hole. He pats it down, smoothing the surface, trying to leave no trace of his strange nocturnal ritual. He has done it. He has outsmarted the gods, the king, and his own tormented mind. He kept his oath, he told no one, and he has saved his sanity. He stands up, a new man, and walks back toward the palace, the first peaceful, dreamless sleep in months already calling to him. The secret is safe now, buried deep in the dark, silent, unmoving earth, where it can do no harm to anyone, ever again. The secret is safe now, buried deep in the dark, silent, unmoving earth, where it can do no harm to anyone ever again. And for a time it seems the barber's desperate plan has worked. He sleeps soundly at night. The trembling in his hands ceases. He performs his duties with a new, lighter spirit, the terrible burden lifted from his soul. In the palace, King Midas remains a recluse, his massive turban a permanent fixture, but the acute, feverish paranoia has subsided. A fragile, quiet sense of normalcy settles over the Golden Kingdom, like a soft blanket of dust. Winter passes, and the world thaws into a cool, wet spring. Your attention is drawn back to the riverbank, to that one small, disturbed patch of earth by the whispering reeds. As the spring sun warms the soil, something begins to grow from the very spot where the barber buried his words. A new clump of reeds sprouts from the ground, but these are different from their neighbors. They grow faster, stronger, their stalks thicker, and are more vibrant, living green than any of the others. It is as if they have been nourished by something, uniquely potent, a secret so powerful it has fertilized the very earth it was buried in. One afternoon, a gentle breeze comes sweeping down the valley, gliding over the surface of the river Pactolus. It rustles the leaves of the trees and creates soft lapping waves on the water. It passes through the reeds along the bank, creating a familiar, dry, rustling sound. But when the breeze passes through the one new, vibrant green clump, the sound is different. It is not a rustle, it is a soft, sibilant whisper, a sound like 1,000 tiny voices speaking at once. At first it is indistinct, but as the wind gusts again, the sound becomes clearer, the words coalescing. Shh. Midas has donkey's ears. Shh. The wind dies down, and the reeds fall silent. Then it blows again, and the Voice returns, a little stronger this time. King Midas has donkey's ears. Nature, it turns out, is a terrible gossip. The barber, in his desperate cleverness, failed to consider one thing. In a world where every river, mountain, and breeze has a spirit, where the gods are woven into the very fabric of existence, nothing is truly inanimate. Historians still debate whether the ancient Greeks truly believed nature was a conscious entity with its own will and agency, or if the personification of winds and trees was simply a poetic metaphor for a world they found both beautiful and terrifyingly unpredictable. But as you listen to these reads, the distinction feels irrelevant. The secret has a voice. The first person to hear it is a young shepherd boy who has brought his flock to the river to drink. He freezes, looking around in confusion, thinking another child is hiding and playing a trick on him. He hears it again and, spooked, quickly gathers his sheep and hurries away, his heart pounding. Later that week, a group of women doing their laundry further down the bank hear the strange whispers carrying on the wind. They tell their husbands. A merchant guiding his barge down the river hears the eerie chorus and carries the unbelievable story with him to the next port. The secret, once a toxic lump in one man's soul, has become airborne. It is the mythological equivalent of a rumor, going viral, spreading not through clicks and shares, but through the much older and just as efficient network of human gossip. There is a deep irony at play. The barber confided in the earth, the domain of the nature gods, the very world that his champion Pan embodies. It is as if the wild itself, slighted by the contest's outcome, is now taking its own subtle, whispering revenge. And Apollo, the god of truth, is also served. A truth so fundamental to a man's flawed character cannot, it seems, remain buried in darkness. It must be brought into the light. The barber chose the earth for its discretion, but he unfortunately picked a spot. That was about to sprout the ancient world's first ever podcast, with a single, very juicy topic. The whispers multiply. The story spreads from the riverbank to the farmlands, from the farmlands to the villages. Soon the entire kingdom is buzzing with the rumor. At first it's dismissed as a children's fantasy or a madman's rambling, but the story is too specific, too strange, and always the same. People begin to think of their reclusive king with his enormous ever-present turban. They think about how he never shows his ears, and suspicion begins to harden into belief. The whispers finally reach the capital, city. They are spoken by guards in the barracks, by cooks in the palace kitchens, by nobles in the shaded courtyards. The sound has come full circle, returning to the very place where the secret was born. One evening, King Midas is sitting alone in his chambers. The windows are open to catch the cool night air. He feels a gentle breeze on his face, a breeze that has traveled up from the river. And carried on that breeze, faint but horrifyingly unmistakably clear, he hears it. The sibilant rustling whisper of 1,000 tiny voices, all saying his name, all telling his story. Midas. King Midas has donkey's ears. Shh! The blood drains from his face. The walls of his golden prison can no longer protect him. The earth itself is crying out his shame. He is no longer a man with a secret. He is a man who is the main character in a story that everyone is telling. The blood drains from his face. The walls of his golden prison can no longer protect him. The earth itself is crying out his shame. He stumbles to the window, pushing the heavy golden shutters wide, and listens. The whisper is undeniable, a persistent, sibilant chorus rising from the distant riverbank, broadcast by nature for all the world to hear. The fight is over. The secret is out. There is nowhere left for him to hide. With a slow, shuddering sigh of utter defeat, he turns from the window. His shoulders, which had been tense for so many months with the effort of concealment, finally slump. You watch as he slowly, deliberately reaches up to his head. There is no more panic, no more frantic hiding. There is only a deep, weary resignation. He unwinds the crimson turban, letting the fine cloth fall unheeded to the floor. For the first time since that day on the mountain, he walks to a polished golden shield hanging on the wall and forces himself to look at his own reflection in the dim, flickering lamplight. He sees the tired, drawn face of a king and perched, atop it, the long, hairy, twitching ears of a fool. He stares for a long time and finally accepts his fate. And what is that fate? What becomes of the characters in this strange, sad story? The myths are quiet on the details, leaving only echoes. Midas, they say, lived out the rest of his days a humbled and broken man. His name, once a byword for unimaginable wealth, underwent its own kind of divine punishment, a social damnatio memoriae. His legacy was not his gold or his kingdom, but his foolishness. He is remembered not as a king, but as a cautionary tale, the man with the donkey's ears. You can imagine him in his final years walking by the river Tmolus, the same river that once filled his life with gold, wishing it were the mythical river Lethe from the underworld, that he might dip his head in and drink a blessed draught of forgetfulness. And what of Pan? You see him in your mind's eye back in his shady sun-dappled glens. He still plays his pipes, but the music is different. The boastful, arrogant edge is gone. His melodies are now more thoughtful, more complex, tinged with a sweet, ancient melancholy. He learned the hard lesson of hubris, that there is a difference between having confidence in your art and having contempt for another's. His music is richer for it, containing a new note of wisdom gained through humiliation. Apollo remains on Olympus, the perfect, radiant god of light, music, and reason. By all accounts, he won. His divine superiority was confirmed, but you, the impartial observer, have seen the brittleness behind his beauty. You have seen how his need for validation, his absolute intolerance of dissent, led him to an act of petty, cruel tyranny. His perfection seems less like a virtue now and more like a cold, unforgiving rigidity. One assumes, however, that he received significantly fewer one-star reviews from that day forward. And the barber, the catalyst for it all. He vanishes from the story, his role fulfilled. He fades back into the anonymity of the common man, a footnote, in a drama of gods and kings, his fate unknown and unrecorded. So the story ends, leaving you with the questions it posed. What is the nature of art? Is it the technically flawless, intellectually brilliant performance, or the simple, rustic, emotional expression? The myth offers no easy answer. It simply shows that the question itself is a dangerous one, and that to judge is to invite disaster. It is a story about pride, the foolish pride of a king, the arrogant pride of a minor god, and the terrible, unbending pride of an Olympian. And it is a story about secrets, a reminder that some truths will not stay buried, that they have a life of their own and will always eventually find their way into the light. Historians and mythologists still debate the ultimate purpose of these strange and enduring stories, whether they were meant to be literal histories of the gods, simple entertainment, or, as it seems tonight, complex psychological maps for navigating the timeless human struggles of pride, shame, and regret. As you reflect on the tale, the sharp details begin to soften. The glittering gold of the palace, the vibrant green of the reeds, the cold light of a god's anger, it all begins to dissolve. The figures of the king and the gods fade into the mists of time, leaving only the quiet rustle of leaves and the gentle, insistent pull of sleep. The world of ancient Phrygia begins to dissolve, the sharp edges of the story blurring into a soft, indistinct haze. The sounds of the lyre and the pipes have long since faded, leaving only the gentle rhythmic whisper of the wind, a sound like soft, even breathing. Let the image of the golden palace melt away, its hard, glittering surfaces softening into a warm, comfortable darkness. Let the memory of the gods' quarrel with all its sound and fury recede until it is a distant, unimportant murmur. There is no more judgment here, no more pride or shame. There is only this quiet, peaceful moment, a safe harbor at the end of a long journey. Feel the weight of the day gently lifting from your shoulders, your thoughts slowing down, becoming as smooth and placid as the surface of a still moonlit river. Every breath you take is a quiet step further away from the waking world, deeper into a place of rest and simple, uncomplicated peace. There is nothing left to do now, nothing to figure out, nothing to remember. All that is left is to rest.